Check, check. Okay. So we can start. Good evening to everyone gathered here. I would like to extend my warm welcome to each one of you. To begin with, I would like to welcome Mr. Sundar Ganesan, the director of Roja Muttaya Research Library, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Vasundhara. That's Vasundhara of class 11 from St. John's Public School in Chennai, who is a very interested, motivated person in the area of archaeology in the studies. And when she expressed her interest in taking part in today's event, we gladly invited her to be a part of this. I'm so happy that school students are coming forward to do this, and we should motivate them. Thank you, Vasundhara. So on behalf of the Roja Muttaya Research Library Trust, I'm very, very happy to invite all of you for this special event. I say this is a special event because today is a special day. 28th September is the 99th anniversary of the announcement of the discovery of Indus civilization by Sir John Marshall. I wanted to quickly run through a timeline. In 1842, as early as 1842, it was Charles Mason who first visited the area of Balochistan. So that was the first time someone spotted something related to Indus civilization. I mean, he was not aware of what is IBC at that time. The background of Charles Mason still is very interesting. People don't know. Some people think he's an archaeologist. Some people think he was an agent by some American government. So the story of Charles Mason is hidden in the diaries of his own, his own diaries. In 1867, later, when the Archaeological Survey of India was started by Alexander Cunningham, he himself became the Director General for the ASI. And in 1872, Major Clark founded the first seal. He had no idea about what the seal was all about in Harappa. And this was publicized in a small gathering. Later, John Marshall, when he became the Director General of ASI in 1902, he was excavating Rajgarh in the beginning, and then later his interest moved to the Indus region, and he engaged Rakaldas Banerjee, Dayaram Sahni to excavate these sites. And later, when the excavated objects were ready, they were all displayed taken to Shimla, which is the summer capital of the government, British government. And the ASI office was there, and it was displayed for Sir John Marshall, where he identified, he compared all these seals, and for the first time, he said there is something very, very interesting and common in both these regions, in Harappa and Mondar, even though they were distanced by such a long distance. And in 1924, September 20, the first news came out in the Illustrated London News given by Sir John Marshall. And that is why we are celebrating this day, and today is the 99th anniversary, and I'll talk about the 100th anniversary shortly. There were several deliberations immediately after this discovery that was announced. To begin with, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, and followed by a few scholars started writing about this, and John Marshall himself declared that it was probably Dravidian, and later by Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, and a lot of deliberations happened about the language and so on. Later, when Ken Dikshit became the chief of ASI, he even talked about how history has to be looked from south of India, and started connecting the languages with the region in the Indus. And a lot of people followed suit. Later, Ernest Mackay and several archaeologists started excavating further, and this famous book, Further Excavations of Mohenjo-daro, was published. And in 1934, Pero Merigi, he writes about the Indus inscriptions for the first time. Then in 1954, much later, when Father Henry Hiras, he was interested in this subject, and he wrote this interesting book called Studies in Proto-Mediterranean Culture, and he links this Indus civilization with Mediterranean and also the Dravidian language. Later, Russian scholars got interested, and they started trying. They were interested in the script, so they were interested in identifying the languages, and they used the computers at that point to statistically analyze the script, and they were not very successful. Then came in the 70s, Asko Parpola and Airavata Mahadevan. Airavata Mahadevan worked on this compendium called the Indus Script, Text, Concordance, and Tables. In 1977, this was published by the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, where all the inscriptions were listed, tabled, analyzed for their position, and then it was published with the primitive computers of those days. And he also harped upon the idea of the Indus script and the civilization being Dravidian. And later it was Frank Southworth, David McAlpin, Walter Fairservice, and a lot of other scholars started writing about the Dravidianness of the script and the civilization. Till date, today the youngest scholar I know of is Bahata Ansumali Mukhopadhyay, who is working on several papers. She has already published, I think, 3 or 4 papers in peer-reviewed journals, and she is also identifying this as Dravidian. And in 2019, Mr. R. Balakrishnan, who is the head of the Indus Research Center, brought out this magnum opus on the, it's called The Journey of a Civilization. Many of you would have bought it, read it, and recently the Honorable Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu also released the Tamil version of that book. So that was his 30 years of work on the Indus civilization and place name studies, Sangam literature, and all put together. He brought all this very interesting compendium. And so since 1924, when it was discovered and announced, this has been declared or being deliberated as a Dravidian civilization or a Dravidian language spoken in the IVC. In fact, in one of the events that took place here, when Airavata Mahadevan came, before he passed away, he mentioned about, when we had a small exhibition, he said, why are you still calling this as a Dravidian hypothesis? Why are you not declaring this as Dravidian? That was what he said in one of the last appearances here. So I thought I must read out these things because today is 99th anniversary. And I said, I'll talk about the 100th anniversary. For 100th anniversary, we have lots of plans. In fact, we will be having a new building in RMR. The RMR will be expanded. We will be having a public space where we'll be having a gallery, we'll be having an auditorium, amphitheater, and all that. And that will be dedicated actually for Sir John Marshall, and probably will be also having his sculpture at that time. So I thought I must mention all these things today, being the anniversary of the announcement of the Indus Valley discovery. So I'm very happy we have with us Professor Cherian today. But before him, we will have Mr. Balakrishnan say a few words about the IVC and also the relevance of today. And now with that, I welcome all of you once again, and thank you for joining. Over to Vasundhara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We are super excited about the 100th year milestone. Prior to the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization, any aspect of Indian culture and civilization was always linked to the Vedic literature and the Vedic culture. The announcement of the discovery of Indus Valley civilization by Sir John Marshall on the same day, 99 years back, was a pivotal moment. The Harappan civilization was inferred to be an urban climax, a civilization full of sophistication where urban life was the central theme. To exactly put forth in Sir John Marshall's words, it was a mature civilization with a high standard of art and craftsmanship and a developed system of writing. It pushed the origin of the Indian history and Indian civilization ages before the Vedic age. Many scholars, as mentioned by Sundar sir, considered this civilization to be Dravidian. Mr. Balakrishnan sir, the author of Journey of Civilization, Indus to Vaigai, which is now published in its Tamil version as Or Panvatin Payanam, validates the Dravidian hypothesis through various methods like archaeology, anthropology, onomastics, pot root, and most importantly, the Sangam literature. This book actually redefines the way we see the Indus Valley civilization's expression and ideologies. The book is omnipresent, right from international library to the small towns of India, presenting scientific facts. Balakrishnan sir is not just a passionate researcher, he's also a multifaceted civil servant who has managed Indian elections and also spearheaded the various initiatives of Odisha government. I would like to now invite Mr. R. Balakrishnan sir, the Honorary Consultant of Indus Research Center of the Indus Valley Civilization, based in Roja Mutaya Research Library, to share special address on this day. Thank you. Over to Balakrishnan sir.
Thank you, Vasundhara. Am I audible? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Today is a special day. We are all assembled here to commemorate the 99th anniversary of the announcement of the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization. We started commemorating with a special program on every September 20th, starting from 2016. It's the 8th year. And then even during COVID, we managed to hold some kind of activity. And then this is for the first time on September 20th. I am not physically present in RMRL because I happened to come back from Chennai yesterday only. I had an important commitment back in Orissa. Okay, I would like to welcome Dr. Cherian and all the audience whom I am not able to see. I will make it very short. Today we are here assembled here to listen to Ms. Cherian. The first question is that why this date is important. Now imagine before the formal announcement of the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization, what was our understanding? about the Indian past, the undated Indian past. So in single stroke, it totally changed the understanding. That means we had an urban civilization. I read a word basically from John Marshall in his own word, what he says about it when he published it. He said that now in a single bound, we have doubled that period and found that 5,000 years ago, people in Sindh and Punjab were living in well-made cities and were in possession of relatively mature civilization with a high standard of art and craftsmen and a developed system of writing. Marshall, 1924, page number 528. Before that, in the Indian subcontinent, if at all, some construction, some brick wall was found. It was what was found in Rajgriha in Bihar, in Maurya time, and then it's an historical beginning of the historical time. In one bound, the particular discovery took a different understanding, a paradigm shift. So because this date, for anybody who is interested in truth, interested in evidence-based history, this date is a golden, has to be inscribed in the golden letters. It's an important milestone. Not only I will not use the word about the Indian history, I would understand the human understanding, human development and the human civilization is an important step. So coming to that, why in Indus Research Center in Chennai, RMRL, as a team, we are all focusing and celebrating, commemorating, because it's very, very important. Because our interest is basically to find out the truth, about the two important questions, which is basically occupying the minds of the Indologists and the people. Number one, what happened to Indus Valley civilization? There's a lot of speculation. And where those people went, such a large population, whether they vanished in the thin air, if they become part and parcel of the culture right now prevailing in different parts of India, in which particular contemporary culture or the literature, the ancient literature, you have the scope to find out the legacies or carried forward memory. Second thing, and particularly for people like us, it's a very important thing that we are brought up in an environment in Tamil Nadu. I have always noticed as a Tamil student, as a person from Tamil Nadu, a kind of collective restlessness in the public mind, in the mind space, always talking about their past. They lost their cities, they lost their town, they changed their capital repeatedly. And Pandya talking about some kind of natural disaster, and Chola talking about the sand dust and sandstorm, Chera talking about the city getting destroyed and all kind of things. Some or other way, they keep talking about their past. So then where that past existed? So the second question, these two riddles, we felt that it's all interconnected. So you cannot have a better person than Mr. Cherian today to address, make this particular talk, because when I came across, and we in RMRL came across him way back in 2018-19 time, when I was coming out with my book, Journey of a Civilization, Mr. Cherian came to our mind immediately. He should only write the foreword for that book, because we know that the kind of work he is doing in Pattanam, in Kerala, how important it is to understand an archaeological proof for Sangam literature outside Tamil Nadu, and particularly part of the ancient Tamilakam. So this is where he comes to picture. We were impressed about his work. This is what precisely the Kiladi, Sivakalai, Adichanallur, and what Mr. Cherian and his team doing in Pattanam. This is what precisely K. and Dixit, sometime 80 years, more than 80 years back, he was at that time, he was no ordinary person. He is not from Tamil Nadu, he is not from Kerala. He was holding an important position as the Director General of Archaeological Survey of India. He came to Chennai, Madras University, to address a talk, and he came out as a printed form in 1939. At that time, from Gujarat, some kind of new evidence started coming, and K. and Dixit, having aware of the fact that something is emerging in Gujarat, he was aware of the Adichanallur 1904 findings from the Alexander Ree. Keeping these two in mind, K.N. Dixit made an observation some 80 years back. He says, a thorough investigation of the area in Tirunelveli district, that is our Tirunelveli district, and the neighboring regions, would be Madurai and Thoothukudi, all these things, such as, he specifically says, ancient seaport of Korkai will one day lead to the discovery of some site which would be contemporaneous with or even little later than the Indus civilization. This is Dixit 1939. We are something around 84 years from that day when the statement was made in Madras. After that, nothing much was done in digging. For every digging, you have to really do a great amount of, as if the larger amount of hesitation, negotiation, reports not coming out and all. So we right now, a lot of things, exciting things are happening in Kiladi, Sivagalai, Potpanai Kotai, and so many other places, Nadichanallur, and all these things, new discoveries are being done. Pattanam also is interesting us. That is the reason we are very, very keen to listen to Mr. Cherian, and particularly probably later Sundar will be explaining how we are planning to commemorate the centenary year of the Indus Valley civilization, because it's a landmark year, is a very, very important watershed moment in the Indian history, and we would like to celebrate it in a very befitting manner. We are planning in a very, very big way, and then we also in the process we would like to, our stakeholding, we understand the stakeholding in the sense that the stakeholding of the people of India, and the truth need to be told. For that, we would be very, very happy to convert the Indus Research Center in RMRL as the global headquarters of the Indus studies, and we would commit ourselves for that. And I would like to say why Vasundhara was there. Probably I didn't listen, probably Sundar must have explained to you, because we want the younger generation, the next generation, to do the stakeholding in the Indus related studies. And she has fully read the JOC, and she is a fan of RMRN. She is a school student. She committed kind of 40% of her prize money and adapted 2 books in RMRL, and then studied Journey of Civilization, participated in discussion in US. She made a presentation. We were thoroughly impressed. We feel that the baton has to be handed over to the next generation. When I got introduced to the Indus-related subject, I was in my late 20s and early 30s and all these things. Now, from the school, we want to introduce Indology, and we want the next generation take charge of that as a symbol, as a symbolic kind of a communication. Vasundhara standing there and compelling this program, it's a very welcome one. I'm very personally happy about that, and I eagerly look forward. Thank you once again. I regret my inability for not being there physically. I'm looking forward to hear Dr. Cherian. Dr. Cherian, once again, welcome in our place. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sundar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. And I am guaranteeing you that the younger generation will take it forward definitely. The ancient world's greatest trading center in East, the 3,000-year-old port of Patnam, which traded in everything from spice to the precious stones, has lots of historic and cultural significance. I would like to welcome a transdisciplinary researcher, Dr. P.J. Cherian, who is the director of the Patnam Excavation Project from Pama. He is a field archaeologist who's digging for the roots of Tamilagam in Cheranadu, and here he is with us today to deliver a lecture on the state, market, and religion as reflected in Muciri Pattinam findings and Sangam sources. Before that, I would like requesting Mr. A.S. Selvan, sir, Fellow Center for Study in Public Space from Roja Muttaya Research Library, to present a memento to Mr. P.J. Cherian. Thank you very much, sir.
Sai Manne Vanakkam. It's a great privilege to come to Tamil Nadu, which was the most integral part of Tamilagam. And she introduced the Cheranad was one of the coastal regions which occupied the modern entire Kerala and contributed enormously to the cultural richness of ancient Tamilagam. And as one who spent almost over a decade or much more than that in excavating, Pattanam has realized my deep roots, and therefore I often feel that we should address each other as Homo sapiens, because the already mention has been made in some detail about the Indus Valley civilization and how Sir John Marshall was instrumental in pushing us back to 5,000 years. But if you look at the way history has appropriated at different stages the kind of affections that I may term as parochialism is often intimidating, and how that parochialisms continue, rather not just continue, it increases in bounds and bounds, and we all struggle sometimes to engage it, to struggle to come out of it, to make negotiations with it. So what I learned from archaeology, even following the kind of footsteps of Sir John Marshall, already said, it is 99th year of this great announcement of the finds from Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So looking in closely, I thought it will be interesting to discuss three institutions. One is state, the other is market, the other is religions that continue to perpetuate and legitimize, and none in this planet can escape from it. I think historiography was greatly responsible for this kind of structural institutions to continue. Definitely, it might be necessary. I'm not going into the other aspect of it. My position is how to critically look at it. How important it is to critically situate it in the 21st century, and then to look into what really happened broadly between 500 BC and 500 AD, which I think many call us the classical age of humanity. That was in the 19th century, when the historians and writers of Europe considered the Roman and the Greek cultures as pointers to higher level of culture and its sophistication. Definitely it was Eurocentric, because they were, as we all do in our different types of parochialisms, wanted to project it as the standard scale for measuring others. But in the 20th century, what happened is, archaeology, as very well mentioned, is an evidence-based inquiry. You cannot construct things beyond a point. Immediately you will feel uneasy. But I'm today risking that, because these kind of institutional structures cannot be really discerned from the kind of evidences we excavate underneath the soil. But it is imminent, it is important, because I think we have reached a tether end where things are going to be really bad. I don't know whether you share that kind of a pessimism. Sometimes I feel deeply disturbed as to where already my younger generation, where it's going. But I'm so happy that you heard about this little girl, though her area of study is physics and biology and maths, she's into this sort of inquiries. This sort of curiosity is important, because, that way only sometimes we can hope for a good future. I also joined to pay my tributes to John Marshall. I believe, whatever exploitative system you do archaeology, it will ultimately serve the humanity. He is said to have been very keen to involve Indians in the Indian excavations. It's a statement I read from his biography. But at the same time, it led him to be a very, very ardent supporter of the freedom struggle. So this is the great extension of the mindscape, the horizon within you, by which you go into the deep past. So I will read for a brief time what is the state, market, and religions as represented in the 21st century. I know it is so reductive, but still I thought it is an important exercise to invoke certain things. As we all know, today's state is a political entity with defined borders and a government that wields power. They exercise this power through several agencies such as executive, legislature, and judiciary, and so on. That doesn't mean that anyone can escape from being part of it. Whether you are in the opposition, whether you are in the police, whether you are in the school, you are all part of this kind of a system in which we have this institution. The market of today represents this kind of economic system in which products, services are created and consumed with the primary goal of profit making in whatever form or format or version of it. Today, international trade and corporatism play a substantial role in the global economy, supported by technology and networking. The goal of all market dynamics is predominantly profit. There seems to be no state or religion in the 21st century which can question the domination of the market forces. The interdependence and collaboration among these three structural forces today is such a reality that it will not be an exaggeration to suggest that the social fabric of the 21st century is in serious threat because of rising economic inequality, unemployment, and environmental threats. Even if organized faith systems or religions provide moral and ethical guidance to huge number of people, they lack an inclusive social consciousness or sense or a philosophy of life. Religions endure at the expense of becoming the tools of state or market, inadvertently or not, but certainly by encouraging and conforming to denominationalism and legitimizing the unfettered accumulation of power and wealth. Organized religions have no answer to the World Inequality Report of 2021 or earlier reports, which more or less show that richest 10% of world population control 76% of all wealth, while the bottom 50% owns only 0.76. The fragmentation of the society into individuals and even knowledge systems into career-related subsistence practices state and market the hope of a hopeless situation. Let us go back in time to have an overview of the mature Iron Age phase, that is the 500 BCE to 500 CE, which can be, as I mentioned, called as the classical age or early historic age, because in this part, it was this phase that contributed to writing and reading, and also into the very different sophistication levels it reached, and as we call normally a Sangam age, and also as mature Iron Age is another frame I would like to use it. In this part of the talk, we will discuss the state, market, and religion based on the Pattinam evidence and some reference to written sources. Before we go back, a word of caution. Please be skeptical of the 21st century delusion that Homo sapiens of earlier times were inferior, backward, uncivilized, or primitive. Archaeological, genetic, and philological evidence indicate that Homo sapiens demonstrated high cognitive faculties even before the beginning of agricultural society and sedentary lifestyles. Their qualities of critical thinking, compassion, and technological abilities enabled them to adapt, develop, create tools, that is innovation, and communicate successfully. This trait is usually recognized today as critical to Homo sapiens survival in the face of great adversaries, especially since they were more in tune with nature. While analyzing state, market, and religions as reflected in the Pattanam finds and written evidence, this presentation seeks to draw your attention to the intellectual and technological advances of Tamilagam in 3 domains. Already, I think Sir John Marshall was mentioning about it, and Dr. Sundar also mentioned about it as art and craftsmen. You also mentioned it, because Indus Valley people, they all are reflections of the nuances, of the balance, and the kind of thinking all these people were having as Homo sapiens, not because they had PhDs from some university. And this is distinct feature of Homo sapiens, and therefore I mentioned this period 500 BC to 500 AD as very well known for technology, especially metallurgy. This is also my reflection from what I touched and probably excavated and tried to understand from Pattanam, which you will see in a few slides. Advances in metallurgy enhanced the effectiveness of agricultural activities, as well as various crafts industries such as precious stone working, medicinal practices, glass manufacture, ceramics, textiles, navigation, and so on, enabling the establishment of larger and more complex urban settlements. This urbanity, organized ways of living, planned way of living is something that doesn't mean that before that there was no planning. Homo sapiens always plan, think, always classify, categorize, and reflect on it. So this kind of ability can be seen in a rich manner in this period. Secondly, literacy. Already in this period also that we have come to this. But the enormous changes that was happening every sphere between 500 BC and 500 AD may be referred to as universal literacy, which represents advances in linguistics and various cognitive capabilities. I just quote one thing. Poets came from all socioeconomic backgrounds imaginable. This is something I learned from Sangam teachers. Only a fragment of the Sangam poems were discovered. Yet from that, we come across 2,381 poems, which were written by 537 poets, and 37 were women, and 102 were anonymous people. I think this kind of things needs more inquiry into the intellectual levels of Homo sapiens, very brilliant, the kind of things that we today carry as our identities and our everything. This is not something that is, I don't know, but as a person who that Pattanam, the peak phase of Pattanam as a port site, known to sailors and merchants who came from outside as Muciris, and Muciri Pattinam as Muciri Pattinam in peninsular India happens to be from 300 BCE to 300 CE. This timeline is based on the findings of 67 trenches so far dug there and inferences derived from 38 AMS radiocarbon and TL dates. Stratigraphy plus stratigraphy of the site and typological evaluations of the Pattanam artifacts. They amount to 30,000. And if you include beads, that is almost around 1 lakh, it becomes 1,30,000 artifacts. And if you also count the shades, that is the terracotta pot shades, it becomes 4.5 lakhs. So it's a huge thing that you have to negotiate in order to understand from which period to which period it would have been active. That is 6 centuries. You know, in any history of any pot site is a huge. But when we ask again the question, which could have been the peak phase, I would say it is from 1st century BCE to 300 CE. Again, you know, this need to be vetted, refined as time goes and based on new evidences. You know, these dates are very reassuring. Why reassuring? Both material and written evidence from 300 BCE to 300 CE attest to a highly sophisticated culture, which would make this discussion on the state, market, and religions very rewarding, I think. The state. At Pattanam, there is very little archaeological evidence that directly points to the existence or the nature of the state. One assemblage could be the 150 Chera coins, only some of which have elephant symbols on the obverse and bow and arrow on the reverse. Other cosmic symbols include stars, crescents, planets, as well as the god, or in Tamil it is called Ankus, that was meant for taming the elephant. You know, this is found only in certain coins. According to stratigraphic indications, these coins occurred only very late in the Sangam age. That is probably in the 1st century AD or 1st century, 1st or 2nd century Common Era CE or AD. A Roman gold coin hoard of 252 coins, they were all gold, was discovered in 1983 from a village very close to Pattanam that is called Valluvalli. And their chronology is calculated as from 100 BCE to 300 CE. I want to mention about you mentioning Pattanam as having a history from 1000 BC. That is correct, because the settlement started with the discovery of iron, its dissemination, and the people who came there first settled, probably it was an island in the river mouth of Periyar. And they started, you know, because you have water everywhere and you have a very safe location in the Periyar river mouth. You know, in the 2018 and 19 floods, it wasn't drowned, it wasn't affected. Because the ancient people, they were very intelligent enough to select that for their port site. So this happens. So it's a story from 1000 BC in a way. But I am talking about when it reached out to every nook and corner of the world. That is amazing. We think you all belong to this place. No, we all belong to different places. Anyhow, we'll be having a brief discussion on that. In the recent excavations, we concluded just a couple of months, 1 month back, in the Trench 67, a metallurgical context and associated finds Uh, points, finds point towards several furnaces and foundries. Both furnaces and foundries offer related industrial facilities serving different purposes. Both require high temperature metallurgical process of smelting, casting, melting, molding, and even minting coins and other products for daily or industrial purposes. The highly disturbed context in Trench 67, I will be showing you some slides, provides enough evidence to closely examine the metallurgical activities located very close to probably the Muciri's wharf itself and warehouses and other features in the immediate adjacent plot. The findings of this particular trench include iron ore and different actually ore materials in rocks, gold foiled glass beads, stone beads, and huge quantity of brickbats with some architectural structure which we could not identify. However, all the well-made bricks of the early historic phase identified at Pattanam were exposed to high temperature activities. The most conspicuous finds could be the highly weathered copper coins, again indicating the presence of state in a metallurgical and trading context. The same trench produced a wide variety of Mediterranean, Red Sea, and South Arabian pottery and other artifacts. The Sangam sources as well as Greek Latin sources contain critical reference and information about the nature of the state. The Tamilagam polity, which consisted of 65 small region rulers and 3 kingdoms, is a distinctive trait that points to federal and decentralized governance systems. There appears to be a well-established precedent that assured the separation of responsibilities and powers, autonomy and fairness to lesser levels of state and governance. Market. The Tamil word Pattinam has derivation, by its derivation, has its origins from Pali, Pattina, which denotes the marketplace or ferry for exchanging goods. This word appears to have survived in many different languages, including Sanskrit, Malayalam, Gujarati, Marathi, Odia, as similar sounding words such as Pattanam, Pattina, Battana, Patna, Padna, and others indicating and meaning port city. 90% of the archaeological data excavated from Pattanam vouch for the Greek authors' claim that Muciris was the first emporia of India. To quote from Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, Muciris is a flourishing port with ships from Ariake, that is, could be Arabian region, coming to it, and also from Greece. It stands on a river which is 500 states distant from the Tundis, that is Tindis for the Greeks, by river and by sea, and 20 states from the mouth of the river, unquote. Even today, calculating the distance of Pattanam, 20 states or around 4.5 kilometers from the Arabian Sea coast, yield the same result as what the author of Periplus recorded roughly 2,000 years ago. Pattanam archaeological records suggest that this port was operating for 600 years, which I already mentioned, And Muciri Pattinam, located almost in the middle of the Indian Ocean, seems to have been the suitable stopover for sailors coming from South China Sea in the east and Red Sea, River Nile, and Mediterranean regions from the west. Pattanam had exchange or trading links with South Arabian and Persian Gulf regions as early as 300 BC, as per the Pattanam evidence. Similarly, so far we get evidence about the Greco-Romans from 1st century BCE. Pliny claims that 250 Roman cargo ships left from just one port in the Red Sea to two Indian ports. One was Berigasa in Gujarat and other was Muziris near Kochi. This was recently a quote from William Dalrymple, and I thought it is important. I haven't come across this, but I thought I should mention it because it needs critical questioning. Anyhow, the beginning of Chinese interactions at Pattanam, he also deviates and say that Silk Route was different and the spice route was probably more prominent and etc. But from Pattanam, we get evidence of the Chinese connections also. I have been part of a field work at Hepu site that is in South China, where I happen to touch and feel the same type of materials, which include jewelry, gold ornaments, West Asian pottery, and precious stone ornaments unearthed at Pattanam. The Hepu site is now recognized as the starting point of the maritime Silk Road, which could have transported Chinese silk to Muziris for Tamilagam people as well as probably for the Romans. Apart from the Tamilagam ports, the two major Indian ports that helped Muziris or Tamilagam preside over the first transoceanic commercial corridor in human history were probably Berigasa in Gujarat and Tamralipti in Bengal. During the early historic period, Berigasa initially was the major port, was followed by Muziris, and later Tamralipti, that is in Bengal, became the important port site, which together transformed the Indian Ocean into a trade lake. The Kopia site in the Sant Kabir Nagar district of Uttar Pradesh also yielded numerous artifacts, including triple-grooved tiles, grey pottery, early historic bricks, and glass beads identical to those recovered at Pattanam. This report is available in the KCHR because I thought it is important to be published by a Tamilagam institute because it has direct connection to a site that was 2,500 kilometers from here. It should be also stated that this Kopia site is located 115 kilometers south of Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha. Coming back to the global market connections of Pattanam, we have identified 40 ports or cultures that were involved in the transoceanic trade corridor from Catalonia in Spain to the Hepu site in South China. This is from limited excavations and limited post-excavation studies. The distinct administrative and maritime capitals of the Cheras, Cholas, and Pandyas illustrate the relative autonomy of the merchants and the brisk trading activity that connected Tamilagam with European, African, and Indian Ocean regions. The administrative capitals and port cities for the Cheras were Karur or Vanchi, with the Muciri Pattinam or Muciris, and for the Cholas, Urayur with Puhar or Kaveri Pattanam, and for Pandyas, it was Madurai and Korkai. Other ports recorded in Greek and Latin documents are numerous, which includes Tindis, Nelkinda, Poduke, Argangulam, and many more. The point here is that numerous hubs of exchanges would not have been thrived for long in the early historic period of South India if critical thinking, autonomy, and innovation had not flourished in the Tamilagam region. Less monetized economy, relative absence of private property, non-appearance of profit as the main motivation extra need to be considered here. Muciris would not have been a legendary port for over 3 centuries, at least, if the nuanced human resources of the period having been combined with the natural riches of the 5 human geographies of Tamilagam and the larger Indian subcontinent. The merchant groups appears to have had autonomy in organizing trade and allied activities ranging from production, processing, value additions, storing to export or import, and so on. Use of advanced technology and practicing fairness in transactions, the state or the king appears to have been a facilitator. Muciri's papyrus document, a very famous document that came off from Egypt, with an Alexander Langer who finished his trade with the Mediterranean regions. Any discernible role. There are references to Nikama or Manigratar as the trade associations of the Sangam age. Nikama is mentioned in Mangulam, Tamil Brahmi cave inscriptions and inscribed potshots of Kodumanal. Manigramatar is mentioned in Sangam literature and Kaveri Pattanam. We have different traders mentioned as Manikan in most of the Sangam literature and in Tamil Brahmi cave inscriptions. I'm not going into the details. I'm concluding. Sangam age exchange system, which were based on mutual reciprocity rather than a widely approved exchange medium, deserves greater examination. The concept of mutual reciprocity may be applied to any early indigenous culture where giving or gifting was a part of their nature-centric life, their intelligence, their sensitivity, their critical thinking, where the giver becomes more happy than the receiver. In the relative absence of private property and also the population size, this would have been plausible. I don't know. The donor was more satisfied or delighted than the receiver. Many Sangam poems, show gifting as a very important virtuous act. I was telling gradually, it is different from your charity business. It has nothing to do with charity. It comes from your deep mind, and you become so happy by gifting somebody something that you seems to have. In Sangam poem saying, you don't really own it. It is the nature that gave you something. So you give it. I'm not going into, you are very familiar with the kind of nuances that Sangam really gives. I sometimes feel I feel that being born a Malayali was a bit, most unfortunate thing when it comes to learning Sangam. Anyhow, we are doing something to learn, even also to learn Tamil. It is also true that Tamilagam, which lacked a dominant caste system, catered to the needs of the Roman society, which was built on slave system. You see the paradox. We had no graded hierarchy, predominant, whereas we were probably supplying goods to a society which had slave system. The variety of export and import commodities is mind-boggling, especially when we realize that exchange may have transpired without a common medium of exchange. This is a serious issue. I always ask economists to help to understand how this exchange was done. I have listed a long list of the things that I have seen. It is long, so I just will read out what are the type of things that went from Tamilagam. Spices, it's a long list. It's went from pepper to cardamom to many things. Spices, wine, alcohol, metals such as gold coins, bullions. We got pieces of bullion from Pattinam. Tablewares, medicinal plants, barks, seeds, coconut, forest woods such as ivory, wood, tortoise shells, animals, adornment items like as jewelry, gemstones, diamonds, pearls, textiles, handicrafts, and various agricultural products that could survive the 40 to 60-day transportation from Muciri or other South Indian ports to different ports located in South China, Red Sea, and Mediterranean regions. This is where modern economic theories that focus on monetary exchanges and profit may fail to account for the indigenous society's inert qualities of critical thinking. That is, to use a Sangam word, Paguttaravu, Anbu, that is compassion, Patru, that is affection, and Unmai, that is inside truth. Religions. Pattinam hasn't revealed any idols or symbols with overt religious overtones. The absence of armaments and weaponry is also notable, demonstrating the generally peaceful lifestyle that the people of Sangam preferred. The only evidence of religions found among the staggering 45 lakhs of pottery fragments was a terracotta rim shared with post-firing graffiti identified and confirmed by as Amana by late Airavadam Mahadevan, implying the existence of Buddhism and Jainism as thought systems, not as organized religions. He dated it as possibly belonging to 2nd century CE, which supports the stratigraphic verification from the trench. The most obvious feature is the lack of caste systems, graded hierarchy, and structured faiths. This is not to dispute the rudimentary presence of some elements in the caste system, but to emphasize the animistic legacy of attributing reverence to Mother Nature and the wisdom of ancestors as the prominent feature of ancient Pattinam and Tamilagam. Nature had an important role in the religious ethos of the Sangam period, as evidenced by Sangam poems and literature. Natural elements such as mountains, oceans, rivers, forests, and animals were revered. Ancestors were honored and ceremonies were performed, including the construction of wide range of grave or burial monuments, but none indicate any obvious religious connotations. The literature of the time, however, clearly demonstrate the impact of Jainism and Buddhism as rational philosophies. In conclusion, the Pattinam site and Sangam age sources point to a remarkable point in Tamilagam history, revealing a thriving society with rational, adaptable, autonomous. This is very important to me. To be autonomous is a great human quality that we fail to exercise in the 21st century. We have the freedom because we have the four things: critical thinking, anbu, unmai, and patru. Any human being will have this quality to be what he is meant to be if they had. And the ancestors, not just of Tamilagam, but all indigenous societies seem to have it in abundance. So autonomous and decentralized governance this is also a very important aspect. That was possible in that time. And a nature-centric and secular philosophy of life. That doesn't mean they were atheists or these are kind of words that later these three structures produced. Pattanam maritime evidence confirmed that this phase of enlightenment brought the world to Pattanam. Brought the world, from Catalonia to China. We have evidence at Pattanam that these people, all the goods they made, had its present there. Thank you very much. I have a long couple of pages more quoting beautiful Sangam translations by Vaidehi Herbert, who taught me a bit of some Sangam, but for the sake of time and probably discussion, I am just going into briefly to show you some slides. You want to off the light? So I'll show you the recently concluded trench number 67, which produced a very complicated metallurgical context. It was from depth 160 centimeter to 295 60 centimeter. There were two wells, one here and another here, and this was a sandy pit, and different features all showing context of burning high temperature activities. As you go down, these features intensify. You see there are circles here, there are kind of different features emerging. Here there was a clay dump and so several features emerge, and we had some XRF studies by advanced, by the Bangalore-based institute. They examined all the chemical and mineral profile of the materials we excavated, and this needs further studies to, so this is when we reached the groundwater level. You can see this is 295 centimeter. Unfortunately, once you reach water level, it is difficult to excavate. But we still excavated for getting some artifacts and things like that. These are the kind of materials, some few only show. They are the gold foiled bead and fragments of broken beads. This is something very, very important for Pattanam. For the first time, we were getting the glass beads in a melt manner. That was melt into a kind of a cluster. It needs definitely laboratory studies to examine and say what it is. We got, dozens of iron objects probably made in this metallurgical context itself, because we give associated finds. This is from the context, and this is probably a coin, and this is a context where we are coming across a copper ingot or some copper With acidic nature of the soil and also the moist condition, Kerala is known for its rains. It is a big problem that many of these things are highly weathered. This is probably a weathered copper coin. And we have to examine and clean it to see that whether any symbols which I mentioned survive. This is also a kind of, probably below it, there is 3 layers. And this could be also before either minting or molding a coin, we are not sure. Below there are 3 coins or shapes that resemble coins is also there. This is a copper ingot from probably 200 plus depth. This is another ingot that is in the case that it has been kept. This is the very, very sophisticated kind of a tool. This is a metal blowpipe necessary for any bead making or any fine jewelry making. And so this also needs further examination. We got a lot of boulders around these furnace areas where this might have been the kind of raw materials that was from which this, except copper, lead, and tin, probably there are evidences for they being imported. But iron was very much abundant in this part, especially in the Cheranad and on both banks of this Periyar. And about the foundation of this culture, in Eurocentric worldview, even when I was in Oxford sometime, there was a view that we have discovered a Roman site in India. They don't consider it as an Indian site with Roman connections. But that is natural. That is like the kind of Sanskritization we had. They had a Roman kind of a phase there. Therefore, this 99% of the materials that we get from Pattanam is either from the South Indian region or India at large. This is a picture. And these are the kind of 12 locations that was identified by Roberta Tomba, who died last year. Actually, it was a great loss for studying Mediterranean ceramics. And she identified this different types of amphora based on the sherds we got. And it is 99.9% correct. And this comes from different parts of the Mediterranean. And then, we made the replicas for a exhibition, and these are the kind of replicas that. Then technology. Look, I believe this technology was very important in the sophistication, whether in philology, in literature, poem. One part of the brain, if it is intensely active, every part of the person, mind and body, will be producing brilliance of some kind of another, a balance of some kind of. I don't want kind of technological advances these people had, lead fragments, and this is the kind of gold they were fond of. This is the ornament I found in Hepu site in China. There were dozens of this, and we have to prove from where it reached, And this is the glass bead, and it seems it was also being produced there. And all types of precious stones were found at Pattanam, and they include beryl, serpentine, citrine, carnelian, garnet, quartz, chalcedony, amethyst, agate, crystal, topaz, and few unidentified varieties. This is a stone technology meant for making cameo blanks. They were all in oval shape, which probably was meant for the Roman world. These are beautiful inlays. And I think you might have noticed when when our Balashna was speaking, he put this as the background. This is the Fortuna goddess. So I was so happy to see her in his speech, in his background. And this is the kind of, this material is Indian. The idea is not. So we were universal. We had no kind of parochialism to this is mine, that is yours. So every time we get things to discuss, and this was the most important find in the 2020 excavations. This is a very strong mythological story, which we wrote in an article in Friendline. This is something that protects the kind of dignity of women. And it was the kind of symbol that has been glorified all over the Mediterranean for some time. Philosophers, writers, poets, everyone used to write about this kind of image. And the gemologist, the professors from Roman University identified this is very close to the one which was worn by none other than the first emperor of Rome, Augustus Caesar. So see how important it is. What is it telling us? It is, so this is also some Roman head statue in any sense. It needs was very known, and Chola Pandya regions were known for excellent. This is the state that is reflected. You can see how elephants are seen, and bow and arrow, and see the elephant. This is about Muciri Pattinam brought people from all continents, 3 continents, and we tried to give a kind of DNA studies, the laboratories, and 11 samples extracted enough DNA to say that, 4 people were from South Asia, 4 from African and West Asian regions, and 3 from Europe. You can check whether to which line you belong, lineage you belong, because we were all there. And this has been recently published in a paper called Genes, in which we have argued that this was the first cosmopolitan society. This is what Airavadam Mahadevan identified as the 2nd century AD Amana, which means the Buddhist Jain influences were there. It was in a big quartz rim that it was seen as a post-fired graffiti mark. And if you spread, again, I'm talking about the kind of universal kind of presence in Tamilagam. All these spot sites from different parts of 3 continents were represented in the Tamilagam. These were the port sites of South India. And these were the 3 port sites that transformed the Indian Ocean probably into a trade lake. And, South India was very special because of, no region in India possessed this kind of characteristics. Water is there and a lot of systems are here. Sometimes I feel it was the rainforest, archipelago of rainforest, because we have 44 river systems and its tributaries. They were making and giving islands, and with all the Pagutaravu and Unmai, Patru and Pasam, they created a world that could be very, very different. So this is the identification of the 40 port sites, which I concluded by saying that it connected the 3 continents. PAMA also offers for any person without any age restrictions to take a break and come and study all the excavation reports. Stay there for 2 weeks. Don't get addicted to all the kind of identities imposed by state, market, and religions. Let us be with our ancestors, and you can spend time in studying some of this. And also, I would like to, because you are a cream of Tamil people who wants to know about Muciri Pattinam, we should have some initiative. Anyhow, next year, Sundarji was saying the 100th year anniversary is going to be celebrated. We should also celebrate in adopting this God-forsaken. Nobody is interested. In the last 8 years, not complaining. I don't want to complain. Actually, none is interested in this site. So what is your civil responsibility? What is my civil responsibility? What little I did was I shifted my residence to Pattanam. And I, with my students, are staying there. That is doesn't matter anything. But I think the Tamilians across the world, it is very small thing for them, can see that this can be a model archaeological site. We are celebrating Sir John Marshall. He had all the market, all the state, all the religions with him. But we have Unmai, Patru, and Pagutaravar. We can really recreate a kind of a site like Kiradi, what you are doing here. It's shifted things. So this is a site that needs that kind of affection and compassion and critical thinking, and also inside truth. That is science in a modern sense of that time. Thank you very much.